Mayor Filner joins us frequently to talk about his priorities at City Hall, which now include a new budget. It also includes a plan to make lemonade out of that lemon we got when a plan to remove parking and traffic from the Plaza de Panama in Balboa Park was shot down by the courts. And Mayor Filner, thanks very much for being here.
Always great. Thank you.
Well, one very big story today is the California Supreme Court today said that it is okay for cities to ban medical marijuana dispensaries if they so choose. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's also okay for us to allow them. And I would hope that the City Council, working with me, finds a balance between access to the humanitarian need of medical marijuana for those who are in a great deal of pain and who are chronically ill, and the need to protect our children in our neighborhoods. There's a balance there. I thought I found a balance with my recommendations. They're looking at them. I wanted access, but I wanted strict regulation. People had to register and personally register in a computer and have a ID card to be able to purchase with the doctor's prescription medical marijuana. I had a high permit fee and excise tax, so that could be fully funded. I had distances between dispensaries and from places where children congregate. So I thought I found the right balance, but the City Council hopefully will look at that and see what they come up with.
Well, before we get to talking about the budget, you have a new plan to remove parking from the Plaza de Panama, as I mentioned, and while the plan offered by philanthropist Irwin Jacobs would have cost tens of millions of dollars, sounds like you just want to put up a no parking sign.
I thought I could do it for cheaper. You know, I was a city councilman for the Balboa Park over 20 years ago, and we came up with a plan that basically we're going to do now. That is, as much parking outside the park as possible, tram system to bring in those visitors, but to make sure there's a higher level of pedestrian experience. So we're going to take the cars out of the center, the Plaza de Panama. We're still going to have circulation as the so-called Jacobs plan did, that is, cars coming in, but far less confrontation with pedestrians. In fact, we're going to close the Laurel Street Bridge on weekends to allow complete pedestrian freedom on that whole part of our park. But the value of what we're going to do, by the way, is it's not only low cost, it's temporary. That is, we can change anything that impacts either the visitors to museums, for example, or parking off 6th Avenue. If anything becomes a real problem, and I think we're going to be able to deal with them, we can change it. It's not like you're putting in a $40 million bridge and that's it.
The City Council is considering now your first budget as San Diego mayor, and that budget assumes a pay raise for city employees of 14% over 5 years. And yet you describe that as a cost savings.
Well, I think that's wrong, Tom. The budget that I presented has no increases for the employees. We are negotiating on a separate track as required by law, employee negotiations. They have suggested 14.5%. The council has come back with a 6%. So that's still not anywhere. We're not close yet.
Well, what is your position?
But I think we should have, first of all, a 5-year agreement, which will, in fact, enact the greatest savings from Prop B, which I did not agree with, and I think will be eventually invalidated. But I am proposing a 5-year pensionable pay freeze, which saves us $1 billion, but with percentage increases in compensation based on non-pensionable items like medical benefits, for example. So employee will see a greater amount of his paycheck, but without having any effect on our pension system. But if we do that, because of the certainty of a 5-year deal, our pension people calculate what our payments are annually, and we will get immediately, over 3 years, a $50 million savings. $50 million, sort of, I'll say, free money because of the calculation. And I think the council ought to take that money and use it for both infrastructure and for employee compensation increases in a way that is not contemplated yet in the budget.
Okay, but just very quickly, the 14% raise over 5 years, are you in favor of that? Or?
No, well, that's part of the calculation. I mean, that's part of negotiations. I don't have, I have to, that's the union's position. The council had an official 6% increase. Usually negotiations end somewhere in between. So we'll see where that goes, but that has to go on in in a closed environment of the negotiations.
Okay, you know, just last week, KPBS hosted a panel of some of your predecessors. We were joined by former mayors Roger Hedgecock, Jerry Sanders, and Pete Wilson, and we wanted you to hear some of the things they said. First of all, here's Roger Hedgecock talking about your sometimes rocky relationship with the city council.
It's obvious that the new mayor doesn't come out of the tradition that we three do, which was basically a bipartisan tradition. We were Republicans or we were party people, but in a limited sense. I always felt personally, and I think every mayor did in that era, that you were representing everybody and that you really had to respond to everybody, and only by working together with Democrats and Republicans and everybody else were you ever going to get anything done anyway. The appearance is that this new mayor is a much more partisan person because he's had that history of many years in the Congress on a very, you know, how Congress is a very partisanized place. So bringing that into San Diego was kind of a foreign element, and even Democrats on the council, I think, kind of recoiled a little bit at some of the stuff that went on, the kind of combativeness that maybe is what Mayor Filner is anyway, but is also the kind of coming out of the experience he's had in Congress.
Partisan, combative. What is your response?
Well, you know, if it came from someone else beside Roger Hedgecock, it may be meaningful. I mean, here's the most partisan extreme guy in the media today in San Diego, and he's calling me partisan. I come out of the same tradition that they did in terms of I served on the school board, I served on our city council. I know how to work with both sides of the aisle and how to do that. I think what they're really upset about more than anything is that not the partisanship or whatever, the contentiousness, we're making changes that they never contemplated. They come out of the same good old boys network that has governed the city for 50 years. I pledged to change that, and I was elected to do it. And that's what they're concerned about. I'm trying to build a more diverse city based on people who have not had a role, whether they come from ethnic minorities or women or educators or environmentalists, not the downtown special interests. And I think that's their real problem, not being too partisan. They know that we got to all work together here. They know that I know that. And we have a council now that is 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans. If I'm going to do anything, clearly you have to work together. They're concerned about the change in the old boys network, and they're trying to preserve it at all costs, and they'll criticize me on any grounds they can. But Roger Hedgecock, you know, criticizing for someone, you know, we're friends, and I've known him for a long time, but to criticizing me for being partisan, I mean, he's the most extreme personality in radio today.
Okay, well, at any rate, thank you, Bob Filner, very much for coming in.
Thanks so much.